Right, this council meeting is resumed. We are now at item 10.5 on the order paper. And this paper has been brought to us by Councillor Wilson and Councillor Gillespie, so I guess it's Councillor Wilson today. Floor's for you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I haven't really prepared much, but to say that this follows on from the workshop we had a few days last week or the week before about the coastal plan and the exciting opportunities there. As we all know, it is 20 years plus since we've had a coastal plan, and it's while we can wait and pause until the RMA comes out, it's an opportunity for us to go out to communities and ask them first and foremost what the opportunities and issues and problems are in those areas. We could do this in parallel, or we could do it in series, as in we can get various stakeholders to tell us what we think. We can use all of our information and come to a view and then take it out to the community. But that comes with some problems of going in with the mindset that you know everything already. And so the suggestion from the staff today is that we take a view that we open this up right at the start for engagement with communities and stakeholders to explore the issues and start that process now. Running alongside that is the integrated catchment management, and that will certainly inform. The staff will be crossing over and informing each other in that work on the Dunedin Coast one that started, and the other ones that will have happened in the Catlins, which would affect the coast, and when they get into North Otago. So that's where the staff are at, and this is a proposal to begin that engagement. Sorry, I'm sure they've got better things to add.
Would you like to add anything to that?
Thanks. I don't have anything to add, but just wanted to introduce my team. So Tom, who I think most met at the workshop if they haven't already, Tom the Housemaker, and this is Amy Young, who's also in the team. So thank you.
Questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I take on board Councillor Wilson's comment that the integrated catchment management work will be brought alongside this community engagement. Can you explain how that will occur, given that the ICM the program's just started on the coast?
The way I see it working is more that the processes will inform each other. So any issues and opportunities that come up through the coast engagement will feed the relevant ones through to Dunedin Coast, and kind of vice versa. So things that they have coming up will come through to us. I think that's how we intend that to work.
Sorry. We will also directly reach out to the different integrated catchment group chairs and inform them of any, and invite them to all the different engagement opportunities as well.
Thank you. I've just got one more question. Just in terms of the engagement plan summary and their timeframes, the timeframes don't seem to leave much room for that sort of integrated consideration of feedback. Is there, I guess, pragmatically, how can you ensure that the many bodies of work that you have operating in the coastal environment, from hazards to, this piece of work, iwi piece of work, integrated catchment management piece of work, how can we as governance be assured that that is all coming together in a strategic way?
Yeah, there's a difficulty. There's a bit of a tension there. I'll admit that. Like, for example, with the catchment action plans, those programs run over a longer period, and we cannot fully align with that. We've got to do this work, and we want to do this in quite a condensed kind of time frame, because they need to inform the planning instruments that are required to be developed under the forthcoming legislation. The first one of which is a spatial plan, which is actually anticipated to be notified before the end of next year. So we actually need to move a little bit quicker.
I suppose that in some ways is the answer of how to bring it together, is it will be through the regional spatial planning part, at least in the first instance. And I think, you know, as I said, what we hear will be able to be informed, like particularly for some of the non-regulatory things that we're most likely to get ideas about. We'll make sure we're feeding them through into the ICM program.
Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, and I possibly should know the answer to this, but in some ways, should North Otago, because of the significant coastal part in the North Otago ICM, should that be brought forward in order to assist in that process? I'm not sure that we've got the resources to do so.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't. That program's sort of been maxed out, if we can use that term, to achieve that faster track for delivery of ICM in line with that 2-year goal. So I think it's a good question, Shalva, how you ensure the parallel pieces of work can be drawn together at the right time. And I think it's something the team are just going to have to be aware of, I suppose, in terms of the opportunity we've got to have an early conversation with the community around the coast. We have heard in previous planning processes that council would have liked us to have taken an opportunity to have an earlier conversation so that that first iteration of our planning documents reflect some of the feedback we hear from the community rather than waiting for that first formal piece of consultation to have that engagement. So I guess what the team are trying to do here is forge, we can now foresee what is going to be required, particularly through the spatial plan, and we know the natural environment plan will include the coast as well. And we have an opportunity, I think the ICM programs that have a coast component will benefit from this more so than the other way around, more so than this benefiting from the ICM conversations, because this is quite a narrow piece of work to inform those statutory documents. I foresee a lot of feedback through this process that will benefit those ICM conversations as they carry on.
Richard was ahead of me though.
Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Kelleher.
That was a really helpful answer there. Made me view things a little bit differently from what I was initially viewing them as. I think, what you said there around helping to shape up, I suppose, a draft planning. But with early thinking from stakeholders and community, etc., will be quite helpful. But how much risk is there, I suppose, of having to do this again? Because the regulatory framework is quite prescriptive in terms of how it wants you to engage on issues and options. So that we'd have to duplicate it.
So I guess the way that we've framed it is to try and de-risk that. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to focus on issues and opportunities rather than issues and options, which we would probably normally do at this stage. Regardless of the framework that we end up with, the issues aren't going to change substantially. There is a risk that some things that are raised are things that we're no longer responsible for determining what the rules are, for example. So the government may set rules which we don't have a say in changing, and some of those things might come up, but I don't think it's unhelpful for you to know that those are issues, even if the power to do something about them is taken out of your hands. So I feel like we have tried to reduce the risks as much as we could about that.
Thanks. And the other one is around a catchment type lens, so that, I've heard what others are saying there, but if you did do it at a different time and you were having consultation on the whole spatial plan, would you potentially have then a mountains to the sea type lens over it rather than just a coastal one?
Can I perhaps help, because the lens of the regional spatial plan
is that more mountains to the sea integrated approach. So the idea of the spatial plan sets that framework for us to have the integrated conversation from top to bottom. And then we'll have the specificity within each of the domains, so coast, land, freshwater. So it should address that. And as I think Fleur noted earlier, the spatial plan does have a lot of coastal elements in it, so that should bring them all together.
Yeah, I think the advantage to going now as opposed to waiting till that time is that we'll get more, I think we'll get more now and more specific to the coast than we would if we just wait till to get the mountains to the sea. And it may be that if we did wait for that, some of the coast issues might get undercooked just because everyone's focused on further upstream. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess trying to think about how I would look at that. The issues and opportunities that are raised through this process will be specific to the coast. The options or responses we take will have a lens of whole of catchment, which is the spatial plan component. So, I mean, that's the distinction. Rather than going out and talking to the community about what are your issues and opportunities for a whole region we're doing a spatial plan for, it will allow engagement with groups that have a specific passion and knowledge and understanding of that environment. But you're right, Gretchen, that the catchment Kūtukitai Mountains to Sea lens needs to be applied when we're considering what our response to those things will be.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you.
That's nicely put up hand.
I was down the line of Gretchen's question as well around, and I suppose I'm getting a bit hung up on the options analysis, the benefits versus risks, because in accepting this paper, I know we're saying that it's opportune to go now, but the risks to me are outweighing the benefits as they are highlighted here. Because we don't know what the legislation, what the new RMA, what is going to be in the next 2.5 years. Now, the explanation that this is actually, we do know, Tom, so you're saying that that this will actually help what we do know. The risks are still quite relevant here, I would have thought. So, are we setting all this engagement up to then have to be redone?
No, I don't think so. Through the bills, we've gotten a pretty good insight in terms of what our responsibilities are in terms of the areas that we need to manage. So in the coast is one of the CMA, the coastal marine area is one of them that is very likely to stay under regional council jurisdiction. In terms of how we can solve the issues, that's where how far can we go in terms of solving or addressing the issues? That's where the uncertainty is. And I say in terms of how far we can go in a regulatory sense as well. Like we said before, we want this information to kind of filter through to the non-regulatory initiatives that we're planning as well. So the knowledge about what are the issues and around the coastal marine area, I think will be very useful in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, on page 1037, which is your table on engagement methods, under the regional pest management plan, we're having drop-in sessions. So, which I've got a series of those dropped into my diary now, which is really, really good. And the importance of those is allowing governance who, I suppose, to have the final vote on whatever plan or process is done. That gives us a very good understanding of what our communities require and want. But if you look at, oops, I've turned that off for some reason. At our target audience in Mana Whenua, you're having ORC to engage Ōkaha and Te Ao Marama, and then Te Ao Marama and Ōkaha will facilitate hui with Runaka with limited or no involvement from ORC staff. So why would why would that be, and why, if they are a formative part of this policy, would we not be there as certainly invited or asked to be there as governance, or in fact have staff there understanding that?
That was proposed by Mana Whenua themselves to have that process where the different Runaka engage with Okaha and Te Amarama and then relay the information or their insights to us, rather than us as an organization going directly towards Runaka.
Yeah, there's a largely a process than keeping it there. And I guess what I would say, if there was a desire from councillors to be involved in those, to understand some of the feedback, be entirely appropriate to raise that at Mana to Mana, and just say there is a genuine interest in hearing that. But from a process perspective, those Runaka largely engage in regulatory processes through Okaha and Te Amarama, so they've obviously proposed that that process will be managed and that information fed through to us. But I certainly see no issue if you felt there was value in attending some of their sessions for it to be just tabled tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, because if we truly want to understand their point of view, I find it critical that I am part of it, like I am with any other part of my community. So thank you. I'll do that tomorrow at Mana to Mana. Thank you.
I've got a question about, I don't know whether it's about process. The word stakeholders doesn't mean anything to me. I have no idea who they are. They change from time to time. But so if we say that we're going to engage with the public and key stakeholders, no idea who they are or what they've said, and why that matters to me, and that there is a question here, why that matters to me is that our interface is mostly with our community, and they would come to me and say, what are you doing about such and such? And I will say, well, the staff are engaging with stakeholders, and the person in the pub who said that to me might say, haven't asked me, and I've got no idea who you propose to ask and whether we've got any input into saying you left such and such out. And I also don't have any knowledge about how it comes back to us. So if it came back to us, for example, and said, here's the ones we're proposing to, and we could add to that if we thought there was extra people. And secondly, when you've talked to them, here's what they've said to us. And then the people out there I can say, you know, that the regional fed farmers person or something said that to us, and he can say, well, that's not what we thought. But so I've got no way of re-engaging with our community about what's A, who you're talking to, and B, what you're hearing from them. So is there a way of putting those two things into the system?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to provide that information, and I was just asking whether we covered it in the workshop or not. I'm not quite sure if we did.
2 weeks ago, sorry.
We did?
No, we did not. At that point, we did not provide a detailed overview of the different stakeholders that we would engage with. But we can definitely provide you with a list, and we're very open to input as to who should be added to that. I just want to clarify as well, we intend to go out to the wider community. So it's not a closed kind of engagement process with only identified stakeholders. It's open to anyone who wants to participate. But we thought it would be useful to directly approach key stakeholders that have an interest in the use of the coastal marine environment.
So that's people like the Port of Otago, Ministry of Fisheries, Department of Conservation, territorial authorities, whatever.
Yeah.
Recreational users.
Yeah. If we know
Different groups.
Yeah.
But yeah,
who's
happy
on
to
that
give you a
list and what they have said,
Yep.
and come back to us, because we don't, I mean, we get sort of collected views, and we can't re-engage without the people who come to us. And
Yeah, we're happy to provide, when we do come back, we'll make sure that we're clear about who said what and what our responses are.
And you'll start by telling us who it is you'll,
Yes, we'll do
so as
that.
we can
We'll
add.
do that soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to confirm, the last few engagements we've done, we've provided all the raw feedback through to elected members, so you can see the breadth and depth of feedback, and there's no issue with doing that.
Councillor Wilson, have you got a
Well,
motion to put?
I'm happy to move, but do you want the key stakeholders to change to the key community groups? Would that make you happier?
Yes, if you'd like to change to that. I just don't know what it means. Until you have a list, you don't know what it is. But
Yep, well, I'm happy whichever way, and I'm very happy with option one. I'm happy to move it. As amended or not.
anyone would like to second that? Seconded Councillor Somerville. Debate. I don't need to talk to it. Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. Look, I'm pleased to see this. It's good to see this. Thank you for all the work that's gone in. Look, I acknowledge there is a lot of uncertainty with the change that's going on at the moment, but I think saying, oh, let's wait and see what comes of that is not an appropriate response, because that can just lead to delay in getting things done. We've heard that whatever the legislative framework will be in the future, this is important, this is useful information we gather. It's really good to hear too about the very likely benefits for catchment action plan development that will also result. So I'm pleased to see this going ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Hollier. Another pretty looking hand.
Thank you for the questions about the integrated catchment management process and the coastal groups that will be involved. So I appreciate that, and because I do think this is an opportunity every time that Otago Regional Councils and the community to connect with people that are going to provide good information. But wait, there's more. If you keep going and help us as being part of this group, then it's an engagement benefit, with the balance of not getting fatigue and people getting over talked with. So yeah, good to know that there's going to be some collaboration with the ICM process. So thank you.
Community groups. Why makes that difference? Okay.
Councillor Gardner.
I want to start off by saying thank you. I 100% appreciate that this body of work is important, and I agree with Councillor Somerville that delay shouldn't be an option. We still have work to do, but I do have a couple of comments to make. So again, my concern isn't around the engagement itself. Understanding the coast is really important. I do have a question around, and I'll put that to you. Do we not have enough to go on right now? But I'll park that. So my hesitation lands more in the strategic architecture sitting behind what is being proposed. Reading both the report and the engagement summary, what is presented as a relatively straightforward engagement decision is in reality already a fairly developed program involving workshops, surveys, stakeholder engagement, and issues towards an issues and opportunities paper, which I'm hearing from the CE is what previous councils have asked for, and I respect that. Individually, those elements are all very reasonable, but collectively the program begins to span a number of quite different functions: engagement, intelligence gathering, framework review, and prep for future planning reform. And I'm not convinced we have sufficiently resolved how those pieces fit together strategically across the organisation, especially what gap this process is expected to fill that could not already be addressed through the review of the Coast Plan. I'm also somewhat uncomfortable that we haven't received the issues and opportunities paper from the work with iwi. I would be more comfortable agreeing to these options were we to have that paper in front of us. I do understand it's coming later. I think it's just a timing issue. I'm not suggesting work should stop, but I do think the sequencing matters. In practical terms, I would have expected an initial stage focused on integrating existing evidence, identifying genuine knowledge gaps, mapping how current coastal work streams connect, and clarifying strategic questions arising from that. We received an excellent summary at our workshop a couple of weeks ago from the team. It's, for me, that is important for creating a third body. I would see that would then provide governance, a stronger foundation, rather than risking multiple engagement processes developing in parallel. I would like to see ORC have an integrated brief on this for governance before we go to the community with it. And I also wonder, could this engagement be better delivered under the LTP consultation process?
Any further debate? Sorry?
I'll do the right of reply.
Right. Councillor Wilson, right of reply.
I think, look, I'm supportive of this because it is key, especially given that most of our, but not all, urban areas are on the beside the coast. And when we get into spatial planning, we have to understand the impacts of those on the coastal environment, doing our spatial planning. So there is a requirement to do this work to be ready for the next stage of planning, which is a very short time frame in the bills. This is also a work that isn't the same as before, and I cannot emphasize enough that the difference here is that we're not just looking for issues and options, we are looking for issues and opportunities, and ensuring that we're looking at what can be done in the non-regulatory space and by community, as well as what should be controlled, which I think is a much broader focus than we've had before and is empowering to the community, especially in the age of climate change and things like that, where people may be looking at agriculture for the first time in Otago. So I'm comfortable that we're doing this at this speed. None of the stuff is easily done in the timeframes we're being asked at the moment. The other part of it, though, is that long-term plan is a very much a financial and strategic document that too often has become confused by having too many things that we consult on at the same time. I think this is the sort of meetings, and I had the pleasure of seeing issues and options at the Dunedin City Council when they went out on their 2GP. You literally get into stuff that makes it a lot easier for the community to have those discussions at how does this affect me level, which, if it's done well and has a whole lot of potential concerns up there, is a really engaging process. So I'm very happy that we're doing this. I think the coast has been very much neglected in our planning framework for far too long, and it is the one that gets the end of the catchment of everything that we do as humans in it. So I'm very happy that we're doing this process, as long as, and we are all being invited to these meetings, we keep a very open mind of what the community is saying.
Right, I'm going to put the motion, which has two parts, together. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Would you like to be noticed?
Sorry, you went really fast.
Sorry.
I was just finding my page. Can you do that again? Sorry.
Division.
Division.
We can have a division. That would
be a pain.
no, that's fine.
Yeah. So just to clarify, this is for both noting and the substantive.
Yeah, they're both together, so it has to be.
We see the motion again?
I can read it to you.
That's
It's up on
It was up on the thing.
Been changed.
right.
One moment.
Not all day, Carly, don't worry.
Thanks.
After that.
Sorry. Okay, are you happy for me to call
Michael,
the division?
Michael,
It's a, yeah.
Councillor Byers,
No.
Councillor Gardner,
No.
Councillor Hollier.
Yep.
Councillor Kelleher,
No.
Councillor Laws,
No.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yep.
Councillor Robertson,
Yes.
Councillor Somerville,
Yes.
Councillor Wilson,
Yes.
Councillor Calvert.
Yes.
Motion has passed. I've got 6 in favour and 4 against.
Good. That just confused me a bit to still have people at the table. Yeah. Yeah, they just couldn't know how to.
We were chatting about it.
Right, we've moved to 10.6, which is going to be presented to us by Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've got the team here to report on our council's activity performance report for the 9-month period ending 31 March 2026, and I will pass over to them.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. To give a summary of the report and the Q3 results, out of the 61 service targets, 48 targets are currently on track, 0 targets are at risk, 8 are off track, and 5 are not yet measured. Overall, there are 79% of targets are on track. This report continues to use a prudent and evidence-based assessment approach ahead of audit. Measures previously assessed as at risk have now been reclassified as off track, where sustained performance issues or external constraints make achievement unlikely by year end. Kia ora, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Wilson.
As this is a quarterly report, if I take you to the first line on the regional leadership, you've got in Q1, you've got 99% of the Lagoimas, and therefore it's red. Get that, because it wasn't 100%. The next 2 are successfully 100%, and I'm not sure why they're not green, because it is a quarter that we're measuring, not the whole year. No? Yeah. Because if I look down below,
Yeah.
and
So
the biennial survey, yeah.
Because the target is 100% all the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We've already failed 100% by Q1. That's why we're reporting red for the rest of the quarters.
But yeah, in the particular quarter, it was green. That overall, yeah, maybe
So the-
It says for the 9-month period.
So the non-financial reporting is always done at the same as our financials. We report it at the end of Q2, and it's the same for non-financials at the end of the quarter. So it reflects what we anticipate the result being at year end. So once that one is missed, then it's missed. It will stay that way.
I think I've asked that before. That does say, with all respect, the activity performance report for Q3, not the whole 9 months. Yeah.
My notes don't. Councillor Malcolm.
I note in talking to other councils that some councils are aggressively charging for Lagoimas. Do we do that, and have we considered that?
We have considered it. We do our best not to, where we can. Where we have a significant request that we know will take a substantial amount of staff time, we'll work with the requestor to try and refine it to a point where we're comfortable we can engage with that process without needing to commit significant resource to it. I think that policy has been around, and we have never as a council chosen to use it. We tried our best to engage with people constructively, and the team are good at working with people where we do feel it is just too big and will have a big impact to refine it down to what's really being requested, and then we work through that process. But we're not certainly not of a mind to be aggressive users of that charging avenue.
I think them in Wellington, Councillor Malcolm, would complain if we started just charging for all the Lagoimas. The idea is that the cheap and cheerful and easier ones, and they can be made more easy by our people saying, what do you really want to know, should be free, and only when it does take significant time would we be charging. That would be a major problem from a democratically Lagoima sort of area to start trying charging for all of them.
my issue around it is that we have a pending rates cap policy coming in. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. Is the reason that we are continually in the red with Lagoimas down to the sheer number of them, the extent of some or all of them, or the resource available to manage them? And I asked this question because it was actually raised with me recently by a journalist around the response times to Lagoimas. So yeah, we're quarter 1, 2, 3 now, all in the red with some reasonable numbers of Lagoimas there.
Yeah, I'll let Tammy jump in. I would say we certainly, it's a very high target, 100%. So, we only have to miss once out of hundreds and then it's red for the year. But, I think the team do an exceptional job. But we can be honest, there was a process issue at the start of the year where a request, it was a formal request and it went through a different channel and it just didn't find its way to the team in time. So that's a correction we can make easily. But once we get them, we know they're a priority because of our statutory requirement in the space, and they are very good at getting those responses out within time. But Tammy, you can add a bit more process if you want.
Thanks. Through the chair, yes, just confirming that one that we missed in quarter 1 was due to administrative process issue. The team does a lot of work to respond within the timeframes. There's also opportunity if it is a large information request that we can extend timeframes, and there's a process by which we do that. But the team do their best to process them within the timeframes. And of the 171, only one of those was not met within the timeframe.
Perhaps just for some extra information, because I've been a user of Lagoimas over the years, that's not a comment by our chief executive at all. He's sitting back from the table. The rules say that not only should somebody who sends an email saying Lagoima at the top of it, or words to that effect, be responded to, but also things that look like they might be a question, such as that Lagoima might apply to them. So the staff have to, wherever they turn up and whatever department, wherever they come from, our staff have to think, oh, that could be something that's covered by Lagoima, and we'll treat it as an official information question. And that's a huge ask by staff whenever somebody just casually sends in something, that they have got to have their ears pricked for that it is. So to do 100% of them is just great to get anywhere near, really. But just that added layer of any request should be treated as a sort of Lagoima, if it fits the criteria, is a big ask. So just to tell people, in case they weren't much users of Lagoimas and didn't understand that it extends over those places. You can come back now.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation.
Further questions? Councillor Malcolm.
On page 1048, and again, provide a regional coordination facility capable of region-wide emergencies and having adequate staff. And I know we've been working hard on that. Are we confident that that process is working, that we are getting more capable people and are in a comfortable position?
Yeah, so we have had discussions on this, and we did have a region-wide exercise last Wednesday, which involved all the territorial authorities and the regional council standing up the coordination centre, and had a large number of staff active in that training. So the reason that's read is we have identified it, but we have also identified that we're not going to have time to facilitate all the necessary training before year end to achieve that. But I am still comfortable in the event we needed to activate the emergency coordination centre, we would have staff who are able to fulfil their functions available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No further questions?
Happy to move.
Moved councillor Malcolm, seconded councillor Gardner. Any debate? There being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
And against? Passed.
Trying to think this off. We're pretty much.
And looking forward to 10.7, which is presenting council's financial reports for the 9-month period to 31st March this year, being Q3. And this is being led by councillor Gardner again.
I have a longer piece for this one. So thanks to Nick and the team. At a headline level, these papers show ORC remains in a strong financial position at a time when many councils around the country are under considerable pressure. Year to date, council is reporting a surplus of 9.4 million, which is approximately 6.9 million ahead of budget, with the full year forecast currently sitting at 7.2 million. The key drivers of that variance are largely timing related, particularly planning underspend where work is currently on hold, the large scale environment fund shifting into next year, favourable public transport performance and timing differences across flood drainage and river management programs. Capital expenditure also remains under budget year to date, primarily reflecting the timing of flood and drainage works. The papers also highlight continued balance sheet strength, including managed funds sitting at approximately 31.4 million and quarter end with markets moving to recover following late quarter international volatility. More broadly though, I think these reports reflect an organisation increasingly focused on long-term thinking, disciplined delivery and pragmatic financial management, during which is arguably one of the biggest changes for local government and environmental management in decades. I also think they reflect very clear governance focus on core business, achievable outcomes for communities, and ensuring ORC enters the LTP process from a position of financial resilience and stability. I'll hand over to Nick to take us through the details.
I think that quite nicely sums it up. I'm happy just to take questions if people want to go through the various reports and have got specifics that they want to discuss.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. On page 1056. Wish we got through it quickly. There's a line in there, and I just want to check whether I'm reading the right line. It's employee benefit expenses. Is that annual leave and things like that, or is that something else?
It's staff. It's all employee benefit expenses, so it's staff salaries.
Mm-hmm.
It includes any accruals for annual leave. It includes it'll include things, other things that we've got in there. What else is in there? ACC, those sort of just, incidental costs to effectively your wages and salaries.
Okay. And I mean, it's a matter I've raised it audit and risk before, and it's not really, I want to understand it. I mean, it's a significant, I think, maybe I've got it wrong, actual above budget for the year end. And just checking, given that in the previous report, there were substantial numbers of things that we're not doing, and therefore less work in some areas being done. Has it been used as an opportunity to use up staff leave entitlements, or is that something that I should be asking at a different place?
It's probably, and you have raised it, Kate, you're right, in the audit and risk when we bring the people report, which has a summary of leave entitlements and things. We have, I guess you call it active management of annual leave. So, and particularly as we head into the Christmas period, we have a close look at any annual leave entitlements and ensure that for those that have significant leave entitlements, there's a plan in place to bring those down. So it's something we're conscious of as a liability we hold in terms of managing it. And while we keep an eye on it during the year, our major focus is as we head in towards that sort of summer planning and ensuring those staff with large entitlements plan to have good breaks to bring that down to a manageable level.
Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. I was looking at the summary of reserves 1073 on page 1065, and I couldn't quite understand that. And I wonder if that's because there was a date that's not quite right. If that's not the explanation, I still can't understand it. On the up at the top there, closing balance on the right says closing balance 30th of June 2025. Is that right, or should it be 31st of March 26?
Yeah, no, it should be
Good.
31 March.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you. That means I can understand it. Thank you. On that page as well, I'm just looking at the under transport, the historic balances for Dunedin and Queenstown. Those balances or debts there are still quite large. And I recall that under the long-term plan, those are going to be paid off under 5 years, over 5 years. That might be a bit more. Is there a likely estimate of when those will be disappear down to zero?
Yeah, the plan was, when we did the long-term plan was 5 years. That was based on what we thought the forecast for those reserves was going to be. The Dunedin Transport Reserve, actually, the actual when we started that ended up slightly higher. So that's likely to take a little bit longer, probably closer to 6 years, because we set the 5 years. We divided what the expected balance was by 5, and we've had that fixed over these last 2 years. So this is only, well, not even 2 years. This is at the end of March. So it's 1 year and 9 months, and you're seeing how much that has come down. So it's still got, over 3 years to go. Queenstown should be paid off in the 5 years. And like I said, Dunedin, because the opening balance actually came in slightly higher than we were forecasting, will take a little bit extra.
All right, thank you, but still within 6 years, for example.
Yeah, I'll confirm it as we go through the long-term plan and the work through there, so that we can look just to check that it is, because council might decide that you want to just, tweak the numbers so that it does come in within 5. But it's, approximately off the top of my head, I think.
Okay, no, thanks. It's good. 107310.
Further questions? Have I a mover and seconder? Moved Councillor Gardner, seconded Councillor Malcolm. Debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Total mobility. Councillor Somerville or Councillor Hollier? Who's leading this? Oh. Councillor Somerville.
Thank you very much. I can give a brief introduction, and then I see we have Anita online. We have Fleur and Laura up the front to help us with any further questions. So thanks. So total mobility, according to the NZTA site, its purpose is that it assists people with long-term impairments to access appropriate transport to meet their daily needs and enhance their community participation. We have known for a year or two that the funding we have received for the total mobility service we administer was not going to be enough. And at the end of last year, Ministry of Transport announced some changes, which included an injection of some further money nationally, but also included changes to try and save money, as we will hear about. We might hear about that. We heard also in public forum from Chris Ford today talking about the importance of total mobility to people with disabilities in our community, and how those changes, proposed changes, will make life difficult for those people. So I guess this paper is presenting our responses to that funding difficulty and the Ministry of Transport's proposals that came out in December. So I'll leave over to the rest of you to introduce that further. Thanks. Oh, sorry, and I will note at the end, I do have a further proposed resolution about, which
Have
I'll
you
talk
sent
about
that
later.
through?
I have sent that through to everyone.
Yeah, I'll just quickly just talk to the two key changes here. So there's one is the change in subsidy from the Ministry of Transport from 75 to 65%. But the second is about a recommended reduction in the fare cap. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the paragraphs 17 and 24 in the report, where the 10% reduction is that recommended by the ministry to kind of ensure that the program gets back into budget. Just to note really that there's discretion about the amount that we reduce the cap by, but there is a need for us to reduce it to some extent. So, do you need anything else?
Questions? Councillor Wilson.
This will have a significant effect on a lot of families, individuals and families, and communities potentially. And I just want to check our ability both to who is having any input on who is entitled to a total mobility card. That is a decision outside our purview, that's granted by a different body.
So the eligibility criteria is set by NZTA, and that hasn't changed at all.
No, but we don't have any. I mean, when we had the public transport hearings, we heard that some people can go one way on a bus, but they may use total mobility on the other way, which is nice that some people can use it at least some of the time, but some people can't use the public transport at any time and need total mobility. And the nature of this subsidy, this action, will decrease that potentially. And so I'm just seeing if there are any things that we can do other than these two options that would make sure that those that desperately need it more than because they have no alternative still have that available. So the other part of that is any options or concessions that we can grant as far as community service cards go. So those that can't afford it most would bear the benefit of the subsidy potentially being different, a variable subsidy, depending on whether they have a community service card or not. Is there any potential to do that?
Can I just pop in, Councillor Wilson? So these are the options that you considered earlier this year.
Yeah.
And there was quite some challenges in terms of the equity of them. And we looked at things like limiting trips and doing some other things. And the decision of the table at that point was to wait for the guidance and then bring this back to you. So this is where we've landed. If you did want us to look at that, we would need to go back and do some more modelling based on the compulsory reduction in the subsidy and then whatever else you might like to do in order for us to do our part to bring it back into budget. So we would just need to remodel those scenarios that we modelled for you last time.
No, thank you. What my question is whether we have the ability to do that, because when I think we last discussed this, we didn't have that guidance, but I maybe I've got that wrong.
I don't believe we'd be able to offer something alternative to the 65% subsidy because that is set nationally by NZTA.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that makes it simple. The way we skin this is very much precluded from us having a say in that, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that we've asked those questions.
Councillor Laws.
There was a paper that came, I think, on this a couple of months ago, is it right? 2 or 3 months ago, I think, Anita, you're referring to it. It included information, I think also around the number of individual trips that were undertaken. Do you remember that, Anita? And the likely impact, I think you modelled at the time of the number of trips that would be decreased as a consequence of the fare schedule being, or the subsidy being decreased. Do you remember that, Anita? I don't have that paper in front of me.
Yes, I do remember, know the paper you're talking about, Councillor Laws.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the question is, the subsidy increased from 50% to 75% in 2022. God knows why. Part of the money splurge that happened at the time. And now we're talking about reducing it to 65%. So we're not going back to the 50% level of 2022. We're simply talking today about reducing it from 75 to 65%. Anita, can you remember, please, what the uptake was then of the total mobility scheme in terms of trips? Because, I mean, if I was given free money, I'd take it too. So what was the impact of the subsidy going from 50 to 75% in total number of trips?
I can't recall the numbers off the top of my head. Sorry, Laura may be better placed than I, but just to confirm, we don't have a choice about the reduction in subsidy. That is mandated for us. The choice that you have is the reduction in the fare cap. And we've recommended, so there's two things that happen. One is
No. So sorry, what I'm trying to correlate is I'm trying to work out, as a consequence of the motion that we would pass today, what the likely impact would be on the total number of trips that is taken, given the 50 to 75% subsidy from 2022, leading to a significant increase in trips taken under this scheme.
Laura, do you
Have
have
you modelled that?
Trying to find it.
I just wondered if it would be modelled, because we've heard from Mr. Ford, just while you're doing that, we've heard from Mr. Ford and others that this would severely impact the social lives and the general lives of people who would be affected by the cut in subsidy. I'm trying to work out, would it really? So that's why you'll have done some modelling to work that out, presumably. We've heard some emotional arguments. I want some empirical data.
So we have modelled the impact of the subsidy on based on 24-25 data. That's in paragraph 26. But that's costs as opposed to trips, and I'm not sure whether that we can extrapolate that out based on average trip costs, because they're quite variable. But that does show what we think we would see in savings, or reduced expenditure, not savings, reduced expenditure.
Yeah. No, what I was trying to work out was what in 2022 the subsidy increase, it obviously increased. Yeah, by a big one. I'm trying to work out, therefore, was it an unfair system in 2022, or was it just simply money given up that people took advantage of? And then what the impact will be, likely impact would be coming back the other way.
We certainly have got the not in this paper, but in the last paper, the increase in
Okay, while you're looking for that, there's another question I've got, and it's this one. What is the total cost to what is the total subsidy of Otago ratepayers under the proposal that you are moving here? So what would Otago ratepayers be if we adopted contribution B to the scheme taken from rates if we were to adopt the recommendation today?
Sorry, I don't have that number. I'd have to go away and have a look for it. Sorry.
100. So it's not that
Councillor Malcolm.
$190,959.
Sorry, I just missed the question. But
No, that's the fare reduction. So what I'm working out is I'm trying to work out the total cost, and then what, as a result of today, the total cost will be to
The difference.
Yeah.
Won't it be that 190?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Can I ask it? It seems that this paper is in response to what's outlined in 15, saying fare subsidy level will reduce, the guidance, to 65. NZTA will work with public transport authorities to lower fare caps by approximately 10%. When did this and that's what we're addressing today. So that's what the ministry is telling us. That will go down and that will have to be reduced by 10% over between now and 2030 or whatever. When did that guidance come out?
It came out in late December.
So, sorry, the reason I'm asking the question is there's another option, which is you don't introduce the 10% at all. You absorb the cost. So I'm just looking, and what I'm trying to do is quantify the cost.
That's what, yeah. Only $32,000 difference.
So that's correct.
Between taking the 10% or taking the 0%.
Correct, that's right.
So the difference compared to the 75% subsidy, I'm looking at the table in paragraph 29.
That's the one we're looking at too.
Yeah, where your difference compared to the 75% subsidy, if you take a 10%, is $477,000 difference. And your difference if you just left it, would be $396,000, which I'm assuming is because of the lower maximum fare, which is being brought in nationally. That we don't have any ability to change that, so we're going to receive a saving anyway. And then the total number of trips, which is the total number of trips above the amended cap fare. So you're looking at $80,000 based on the reading.
Am I, or am I looking at 32? Am I looking at the ORC portion, Richard, which is the next?
Yeah, sorry, Bobby. Yeah, so over total difference 70, ORC portion 32.
32,000.
Yeah.
So this is all about $32,000. That if we rejected today's 10% and said no, just keep things the way we are, we'd have to find $32,000 in this financial year or the next financial year.
So in the current financial year.
Yeah, it is.
So 25, 26.
Yeah, but it will apply in ongoing.
Correct. So it'll be.
Fleur, do you want to, is that?
I'm just a bit cautious about suggesting that might be how it goes, because I think the ORC portion, like this, because of the way it's funded between NZTA and ORC, it might, I just want to check the numbers before confirming that we're reading.
It's sort of central, isn't it?
This guidance seems to say quite clearly that they will work with us to lower fare caps by 10%. So would we, if we didn't do that, would we be saying, no point working with us, we're not going to do what NZTA is supposed to be working with us to do?
What I'm working out is if we've got the option to say, you're reducing that fare, but then we, in actual fact, compensate that fare portion.
They say lower fare caps, not.
So they're demanding of
NZTA,
us. We don't have an option. Is that what you're saying?
Well, this guidance summary says NZTA to lower fare caps, not to reduce increase the cost to mobility people, but to lower fare caps, which wouldn't give us an option, I would have thought, if I misinterpreted what you're saying here.
So you are correct. So we've been told that every PTA has to reduce fare caps. The MOT and NZTA have recommended everybody does 10%, but there is flexibility. Councillor Laws, you could say no. What I will say is our total mobility scheme over this 3-year LTP period, we are forecasting in over a spend of about $800,000 already. You'll recall, because it's been just the demand has been escalating over time. So the changes you make for the balance of this 3-year period will make a small bit of a difference, and then we'll adjust for the next LTPs. And that $800,000 is reduced from the 1.5 million we told you last time, because we got a one-off grant of about $800,000 from the $10 million one-off fund the government announced. So we're already well and truly overspent on this in this line, but you could make a choice to have a different cap than the 10%. That's not recommended to us.
But you can see. Okay, I'm just trying to make a rational decision here. So in the rational decision is based upon what is the likely result in trips not taken as a consequence of today's policy?
I think our
5,000.
Our chief executive wants to answer a question there.
No, it's different question.
And then if is that likely to cause, now remember submissions from not just today, but also the previous council, we'd heard that this would cause hardship in certain situations. I'm trying to quantify the financial cost of what that hardship might be to the Otago ratepayer. And then I'm trying to quantify what the hardship would be to those in recipient or who are in receipt currently of this particular mobility scheme.
Follow-up question though would be, what would be the effect of us saying, no, you've told us to lower our fare caps by 10% and we're not going to?
Yes, well, we will meet the shortfall of that.
No, that doesn't, it's what it says. Fare caps will be lowered by 10%.
Oh, that's the question I'm asking, is do we have an option or not?
Yeah, so you're sorry, Laura, you have the option to make that decision today. That's why the paper is here. So there, as I was explaining for Kate's question at the start, nationally the decision around the subsidy has been made. That's something, but the cap is the decision of council to make today. To Hillary's point, the government or through NZTA have very clearly indicated the desire to work with all councils to try and get the spending within the total mobility program back within the bracket of what they allow in the NLTP for funding. And the expectation through the communication is that we will do our bit, even if it's only a small bit, and we can see from the numbers there it's not significant, if we're talking about our total operating budget. But it is, I guess, an expectation you can take from the communication we've had with NZTA that we do that we do consider that, and they have made that recommendation that Anita just summarised there, that councils take the 10% option in terms of the reduction. So I've just been trying to look back, Michael, and that's why I probably misheard the question before, and I haven't been able to find that report. In terms of your question, what do we think the impact would be just in terms of pure numbers? And I don't think we know. I mean, I think there are significant factors that will be impacting people's ability just in terms of general cost of living, not just this. So we would be, making some assumptions that I don't think would be based on, I don't think we could have a super high degree of confidence. We have been able to model what the financial impact of the decision would be, or our estimated impact, and that's probably, the data that we have the most confidence in.
Thank you. Then
Councillor Malcolm.
Sorry, I haven't finished.
It's the same. Really, trust me.
I chose one of you
Okay.
instead of the other when you were both talking.
As I go to the top, NZTA will work with public transport authorities to lower fare caps by approximately, work with. The mandate is the actual subsidy has gone from 75 to 65.
Correct.
So therefore, while the subsidy reduction is mandated, the level of fare cap reduction is to be decided by each PTA.
Correct.
So, and while they're recommending 10% aim to get total mobility back within budget by 2030. So I don't see that. Am I right in saying that that is not a you must drop your fare cap? I don't see that as a staff is recommending that.
So just to be clear, they can't tell us we must. That's not the way the system works. They can make a recommendation. That's why the paper's here, because you have to decide.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Can I have a supplementary to that? Sorry, Councillor.
Certainly.
So therefore, looking at that schedule, if I have got the figures right, there seems by taking it to 10%, I will impact at least 5,000 users or 5,000 trips. If I keep it at 10%, or 5,000 people will have to pay additional funds. And that will cost the ORC around about $32,000 if I chose to go with zero. So I'm affecting 5,000 people, 5,000 plus people, but and at a cost of about 32,000. That's from paragraph 29 of the chart.
So just for clarity, 5,000 trips. We don't. It wouldn't be 5,000 people, because it would be.
No, trips, that's what I said. Yeah, it's the number of trips. It might be.
Yeah. And and this one, and apologies, I can't answer it, and I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I will. The difference compared to 75, are we guaranteed to receive the NZTA portion of total mobility funding, which is effectively the difference between the LRC portion and the column next to it? Because if they have exhausted their NLTP allocation for total mobility, my assumption is that we wouldn't receive any further grant funding and would be up for the total amount, which is the way the transport funding works.
Yeah, we're not guaranteed any additional funding. So our, you'll recall we've had anticipated funding for the SURF, the Climate and Emergency Resilience Fund. The amount that we've been allocated for SURF for year 3 is reduced, and we've had that one-off payment out of the $10 million pot. There is no more money coming to ORC for total mobility.
Thank you.
Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. We've been discussing around what I'm about to ask, but I think a very relevant question, and it's one that perhaps we are probably unable to answer, is what would be the effect on NZTA's decision-making if the ORC decided not to reduce that fare cap? And we don't know the answer to that, but I suspect there may be some risks. I'm not sure if anyone is able to outline some of those risks.
So we don't know exactly what might happen, but we do work as a country in this space, and the suggestion from NZTA is that everybody needs to do a little bit, and that little bit looks like 10%. The implication may fall on other. Look, I'm not sure. I genuinely couldn't tell you, Councillor Somerville, but it was a reasonably strong recommendation to adopt a 10% fare reduction, but that's entirely up to you to make that call.
Sorry, just to add to that, with the I guess the request for all PTAs to reduce by 10%, that would free up more Crown funding that can then be recycled through. So I think if enough regions don't reduce their fare caps, it just puts a limit on what extra funds are available nationally to be potentially granted out again. That would be the big impact, yeah.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thanks. Isn't the impact quite clearly shown in number 28? So the table there shows that for each of the options, whether it's 10%, 15, 20 or 0, the increase in cost to cardholders. So doesn't it then, if you're a cardholder, you can quite clearly calculate based on, these are broad numbers, but that gives you the indication of how much more this is going to cost you. So can't we draw from that what the conclusions are around this? The imposition to the cardholders is those numbers there for our thinking of the future. Now, that doesn't take into account that we don't have the numbers for the 25-26 year. And then because we've seen an increase from 24-25, they're quite dangerous numbers to use because there's been a big increase from there. And chances are there could be a big increase into the next year.
And yeah, you're right, Gary. That is I guess the question that I'm about is what will the impact be in terms of trips taken, and that would just be an assumption based on what people's decision is going to be based on the increases they're seeing in table 28. We just don't know.
Yeah, we're trying to make assumptions what people's individual choices will be. Whether they can afford that or not, whether they will choose to reprioritise how they afford it, we don't know.
Correct.
Councillor Wilson.
Just trying another.
Oh, sorry, was somebody supposed to answer that apart from Richard?
I think Richard very clearly answered it.
If I went back to the December 2025 report, we got some clear numbers on the number of trips done in certain places. Dunedin was 117,000, Balclutha 1,251. Now, I just want to check and analyse not in the accessibility to these services and what happened after 2022, because my understanding is that these services weren't being provided in some areas until there was a some people entered the market with a 75% subsidy because it became a viable business. Am I correct in that?
I don't, from our understanding, I don't think operators chose to onboard because of the 75% subsidy. We saw numerous operators get off of the scheme during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then once that kind of plateaued, we saw operators slowly come back. Or a couple of operators come back. I think it was more to do with the conditions of the pandemic kind of settling rather than the 75% subsidy.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not so worried. Yeah, I probably articulated that. I didn't think there were being services in some of those rural areas before that they came in after 2022, or have I got that wrong?
Alexandra, the same operator, had prior been an operator for a total mobility operator.
Okay.
And I believe there had been one in Balclutha a few years ago as well, and they dropped off, and then a new one came. That was a different operator, but Balclutha had been served prior to.
Okay. Have we any concerns with the reduction in the fare cap or the subsidies that these services may no longer be viable in some of those areas? Because the numbers will go down. I mean, Councillor Laws is absolutely correct. The number of trips went up quite exponentially in the August 2025 report.
I don't think we'd be able to.
Yeah, extrapolate that. That's fine. And we couldn't actually cap the fare differently, reduce the cap anyway between the different centres, I presume. No.
Last question, Councillor Hollier.
Just in paragraph with regards to option 4, I get the point that by going for that one, then we're uncertain what NZTA and MOT may react. But your next line, it also makes it harder for ORC to work towards a sustainable service. What are you trying to refer to there?
What essentially we're saying is we also need to reduce the fare cap to try and get back within our budgets because we've not been able to do that. So that's why we've recommended option 1. It starts to make the system and the scheme, more financially sustainable. Although we're not there yet, and it will probably take us longer as well. But doing that little bit just reduces the rates burden across RC.
That's a very good use of your hand.
Was that a question that required an answer? That you've got an answer or you haven't? Or
Yeah, I just wanted clarification.
would somebody like to move this recommendation with the third one?
I
would like to, Councillor Somerville?
move, and I must say with great reluctance, I would like to remove, I'll explain later, the recommendations as they are put there, noting the report and adopting the 10% reduction in the fare cap, with a further recommendation, which I see is up on the board there. I'll see if I can read it there. Which is that Council writes to the Minister of Transport urging that total mobility is reviewed and better resourced so that it can fully meet its purpose for all communities. And I'm happy to speak to that and explain that later.
Have I a seconder? Councillor Hollier. Debate.
Shall I open? Yeah, look, as I say, it is with great reluctance that I support recommended 10% reduction in fare cap. I think the ORC has been put in a very difficult position here, and it's related to the under-resourcing of an important service. The growth of total mobility has been, the use of the service has been greater than expected, and that has put a real pressure on the funding, and meaning the funding that we are receiving, the national funding, has not been adequate. This is not only a problem at Otago, it's a problem nationally. How to deal with that, though, well, the best solution would be if there was adequate funding to support the level of demand that is currently there and will likely be growing in the future. That level of funding is not coming through though, so what can we do? As I say, I think we are put in a difficult position here and need to bear in mind, as we've heard in some of the discussion, about sort of responsibility for playing our part in the national situation as well. That said, in the longer term, perhaps we can do something useful to really try and support total mobility users within our community. And that's why I have proposed that we do urge the Minister of Transport to review the system and make sure it is properly resourced so that total mobility users in all parts of the country, Otago we are talking about, but in all parts of New Zealand, do have access to that service in an affordable way. And I'll go back to that purpose of total mobility, that people with long-term impairments have access to appropriate transport to meet their daily needs and enhance their community participation. So this is really important stuff. Thank you. I'll leave it there for now.
Further debate. Councillor Laws.
Listen, I hesitate because it is a huge issue. It's a national issue rather than just a local or regional issue. And it's exacerbated by our ageing population and by the desire to keep people in their own homes because it's cheaper than paying rest home subsidies. And so it has a significant impact also for stroke victims and for folk who are severely disabled, who are under the age of 65. And those numbers are increasing as well. The budget escalated out of control when the subsidy went from 50 to 75%, and it became open-ended effectively. And as a consequence of that, people have taken advantage of it. Listen, there will be people who shouldn't be using it or who are misusing it for primarily recreational social purposes, and expecting the New Zealand taxpayer and the Otago regional ratepayer to be a part of that. But until you, in actual fact, go through trip by trip and started to quantify, it would be impossible to work out who's deserving and who's undeserving. And so as a consequence of this, we've got this trim. But can I just say, a 27 or 28% increase in mobility charges or charges for those who want to use this particular service is a hell of a lot of money. And Councillor Malcolm and I have been sitting here trying to work out what the real cost is to the real ratepayers. I am going to support Councillor, good God, there's something wrong with us today, Alan. Councillor Somerville's letter, because we need to do a lot more work on this at a national level. Thinking that we can ring fence it around Otago, I accept that's probably silly. But the reality is that our numbers in Otago are going to increase. The demand upon the service is going to increase. And by 2030, I have to say, we simply won't have the budget. You'll be going the other way if you kept on using the same logic. So we need to engage in a conversation with central government. I'm more than happy to support Councillor Somerville. I will reluctantly agree to item 2 today.
Councillor Hollier.
Yeah, just quickly, I agree with Councillor Somerville and Laws as to what they're trying to do. Intuitively, option 4 would be the one I prefer generally, to just make it as best as possible for our customers and look after their interests, but in the expectation of the greater good, that getting alongside with the NZTA and MOT is going to make it better gain in the longer term. Then I think that's the only way to go. So yeah, thanks for the additional amendment, Alan, and yeah, I'll support what you've written there and the other two too. Thank you.
I'll support this motion, and I agree with what I understand to be the sense of direction from the previous speakers. I was a wee bit saddened to think that we're getting to the right to the minister now, because this is six months near enough to when we knew about it. And maybe February would have been a bit of time, but I would really like, if, when we're writing to the minister, if that's the mood of the meeting, to get in amongst Mr. Ford's impassioned plea to us this morning and try and find out more about, I mean, we know something about, but more that we can write to the minister about what's happened with the increase in usage and what.
Everyone, and welcome to a sorry.
What if he had, and people all understand the limited budget problems here, but if they were limiting it how they would, whether there's any other tweaks that would be a better way of sharing that money more equally, or whether there's other ways that we could find to support that community, that because we don't need to support it through caps in that mobility thing. We've got other things we can do as a council, but I would really like to know a lot more about whether the disabled community and others who use this total mobility, how they would find the fairest way of divvying it up, and who are the missing links. Is there any other way of supporting them? So I'd like to really not just write saying we really urge you to review it and have a better think about that, but a more fulsome letter. So that's my suggestion about how we do the letter, but I'll support those three. Councillor Wilson.
I'm still loath to support number 2, albeit we've been told to, but we haven't got the data. And one of the problems is that it's cause and effect once we've done this and it is implemented on the 1st of July. We can't take back the negative effect that it may well have and will have on some people. These businesses that run are generally very low viability because they do so much more with this community. The time they put in is barely covered in the costs, because it may take twice as long to just get into the vehicles as the trip takes. And it just really concerns me that we'll end up with people not supplying the service because they've become unviable, especially in areas where there is absolutely no alternative. So I hope that is going to be messaged. I think the messaging of targeting this more on a needs basis and absolutely understanding that is important. This is a disability community being hit at several fronts on budget cuts or budget changes. We'll know more possibly tomorrow. And hopefully there'll be some relief. I'm just really loath. I don't feel like we understand fully the effect of that decision. It may be one that we're not can't push back on, but I think there'll be some severe consequences for some families.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. Yep, I'll support all three. I think in supporting 2, I think we have no option. There is nothing to be achieved by going against government direction with this, and certainly writing to a minister and looking or seeking further funding in a better situation is just a given. I don't agree that, but I'm not basing that on fact, but the thought that this is being misused. I think the increase in use will have come from the benefit that came from the increased subsidy, and it has resulted in some more activity to those who might have made more of a choice in whether they would go out or not. Yeah, I would have thought the safeguards are in place to ensure that those that need total mobility are falling into that fund, into that cost for each trip, and that's identified by the provider. So as Councillor Wilson has just highlighted, it's potentially a very different service to someone who has sprinted down the garden path and hurdled the garden gate to get in a taxi, as opposed to how a total mobility user will have access to vehicles. So the more potentially the government can provide for this, the better.
Thank you. Further debate? Were you wanting to say something, councillor Laws, or would you like to turn your microphone off?
Oh, sorry.
If there's no further debate, a right of reply for councillor Somerville.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I appreciate what everyone has said on this issue. It is not a straightforward matter. And I just request, can we take those three motions separately? Thanks.
We can. I didn't get a feel from the meeting that we need to. Are you?
I think it would be fairer on all councillors here just to let them choose which way they vote on each one. Won't take long.
Okay, we may as well do it by division.
I wasn't suggesting a division. I was suggesting just take them separately.
First, notes this report. All those in favour?
Aye.
On the contrary, carried. Secondly, adopts the recommended reduction. All those in favour?
Aye.
No.
Councillor Malcolm and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
Number 3, rights to the minister. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, annual air quality report. Is that the last in? Results of the state of the environment monitoring for air quality for the calendar year 2025, presented by Councillor Robertson. The floor is yours.
I've been waiting for this all day.
Yeah, welcome staff. Welcome to Sarah and Ben. Great to have you here. So yeah, this is fairly straightforward. As you have outlined, Chair, that's probably all that needs to be said.
Sorry.
No, totally fine. We can hand over, I think, to the technical experts to run us through much better than I can what this report is presenting. Perhaps if you wanted to touch on what the elements are that were monitored, whether it was a good or bad, or what sort of winter it was that we had last year, and also just any changes that we're going to make to the program as well. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. This report presents the air quality results for 2025. Firstly, I'd like to thank the environmental monitoring team for the network and data maintenance. Looking after the air quality network is one of the more challenging aspects of their work. The instruments are expensive, they're very complex, it takes a lot of work, time and expertise to install and maintain them. In addition, the team undertook quite a lot of, significant amount of upgrades to the network to ensure the network longevity. They did this while maintaining a very high standard of data quality. So in 2025, we monitored particle pollution, PM10 and PM2.5. The National Environmental Standard for Air Quality, and that is the standard for the protection of human health, for PM10 was exceeded 16 times in 3 of our 4 PM10 sites. This was due to our primary source of air pollution, which is solid fuel burning for home heating during winter. There were 4 exceedances in Alexandra, 10 in Arrowtown, and 2 in Mosgiel. For PM2.5, we have continuous monitoring now set up in 8 of our sites. We're not able to measure this data in relation to any limits yet. However, we're well placed to start doing that from next year for some of our sites. Last year was also significant in that for the first time we began using our mobile trailer for a couple of sites previously identified as at risk of having high concentrations as well in winter, which is part of an ongoing program to assess this risk in some of the region's unmonitored urban areas. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Somerville, followed by Councillor Hollier.
Right, thank you very much. Thanks for this report. Look, I'm just referring to paragraphs 7 and 12. I note there's, in 7 it notes there'll be, currently being upgraded to include, expanded to add new sites. I note in 12 it describes central Dunedin, where we know we have a site that doesn't show seasonal variation as home heating emissions, not an important source. In those new sites, is there going to be any opportunity to extending that monitoring in Dunedin to residential areas where that home heating may be significant?
Short answer is yes. We have basically a list of priorities. We have a number of airsheds or designated airsheds in Otago that aren't monitored, and all of them we have a sort of listed them out as a number of an order of priority for being at risk of exceeding. And so we're working our way through them with temporary monitoring with the trailers. And so Dunedin will be on that list. It's just not the immediate, it's not in the immediate future. We've only got 2 trailers at the moment, so we can only really do two new locations a year.
And so will the results of that temporary monitoring lead to some decision making where permanent monitors would be established?
That's the idea, yeah.
Right, okay, thanks.
Councillor Hollier, then Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Byers.
Thanks for the support. I'm just on the website and I was looking the other day, the data is not live, is it? Like we have for river flow reports?
It is, it's updated every hour.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
On our website, yeah.
On the Lawa website. I need my driving lessons to sort these things out properly. Okay, that's cool, thank you. And my other question was, we heard earlier and the reason for the monitoring and understanding this is with regards to health outcomes for the people that are in the community. Have we got overlays of graphs sort of showing is there any data that is comparable from the health side of things that comes through with the same stuff that you can sort of overlay in a graph format?
Yes, there is the Health and Air Pollution New Zealand model, which was updated in 2021. And so that has a lot of statistics of health impacts divided by district. So yeah, you can go through, there's a...
is that on our website as well?
It's not on our website, but you can find it's called a dashboard.
Yeah.
You can find a dashboard for it. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering about the value of the of having that direct data presented to people when we're trying to explain the importance of the science and whether there is any value in that as an opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, just for clarity, Mick, because it's good, it has that question around how it's come up before. If we were bringing a paper that was looking at what council may choose to do in response to data, then I would expect to see the health picture, certainly forming part of that and us seeking advice from experts in that area. For our annual air quality, it's purely the results of our own monitoring, just as a...
Yeah, I get that. I'm just trying to work out the engagement with the community and the importance of this sort of stuff is sometimes more obvious if it's
how we use it
between their eyeballs rather than just going, oh, by the way, here's a number. Just gives context and a sense of relevance to people when they can see that sort of information in one place.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Byers, then Councillor Laws.
Slightly off point, but we've got a long-term planning workshop tomorrow. Just checking, have we got money? What's the funding looking like in this work stream? If we wanted to put monitoring sites on, that maybe one that isn't for you, or is this something that we should be actively inquiring of through that process?
There is budget at the moment for expanding the network slowly. We've been chipping away at that over the last few years. And at this stage, that budget is forecast to continue, but obviously we'll go through the long-term plan process and consider options for either increasing or decreasing that funding.
Thank you.
Councillor Byers, then Councillor Laws and Councillor Malcolm.
What Matt touched on, the
mobile trailers, they collect data every hour. But everything else I see in here is, it's all talking about 24-hour averages. So how are we supposed to deduce, like, say Arrowtown had 10 exceedances, but if they just spiked at 3 a.m, that's recorded as an exceedance, I take it.
Yeah, that's right. The exceedances, well, the daily average is midnight to midnight. So it captures the night, but not the morning after. And usually those two things are linked. For the 24-hour average, that's just how we report for the National Environmental Standards. That's the limits are at 24 hours. There is no hourly limit for PM10. But you know, the hourly average can indicate high values if you're wanting to look at it and see where it's tracking. Yeah.
But so those hourly reports from the trailers are available to see somewhere.
They are not quite set up yet in our system, but we are working on it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Permanent sites are live and on there, just the trailers are not.
So
Some of our PM 2.5 sites are not currently live on LAWA yet. They are monitoring PM 2.5, which is not a requirement for us. It's sort of a thing that we're doing now because it's been indicated that it will be having a standard in the National Environmental Standards at some point. So that's why we monitor that. But we've had technical issues with our with some of our sites and the data transfer essentially. But it's really on the way, and we'll be able to upload past years as well.
what sites could I look at currently then that would show hourly monitoring?
So those sites are Central Dunedin, Alexandra, Arrowtown, and Mosgiel.
Cool. Okay.
Councillor Laws.
On clause 9, you say air quality data can be compared to several standards.
Microphone, councillor.
Air quality standards can be compared to several standards and guidelines. However, the legal limit in New Zealand is 50 or whatever that particular thing is. When you say the legal limit, I understand there's a national policy statement on air quality or whatever, but it's not illegal to go over that, is it?
Under the National Environmental Standards, we're allowed 1 exceedance per year per site. Anything over that is a breach of the standard.
Okay, so, but it's not illegal, is it? I mean, no one's going to prosecute us. That's correct, isn't it?
You're not supposed to issue consents.
Sorry?
You're not supposed to issue consents in that airshed, so there is quite a ramification if you're not meeting it.
Sorry, well, let's clarify this. It's not against the law, so it's against, but it's an exceedance of the national standard. That's fine. We're not going to get prosecuted. Nobody says, oh, you're over, you know, here's the charge and stuff like that when we go and prosecute, for example, a council that's discharging sewage or something like that. Are you saying that, can I just clarify what Councillor Robertson said, that we would stop issuing consents in an area? What does that mean? What consents for what? Home heating?
We don't consent home heating.
No, we don't. So what are the consents that we would stop issuing in an airshed were we to be exceeding in this particular case?
So there's a range of different discharges to air that are consentable, and different types of industrial discharge. You know, a couple of examples would be most of our wastewater treatment plants that have any kind of burning facility have a requirement to seek consent to discharge to air. If that activity were proposed within a airshed where the effects of that activity could be demonstrated to, you know, actively worsen a situation where we're already measuring exceedances, Councillor Robinson is right, that would be a challenge to consent.
Has that ever happened? Have we ever declined a consent on the basis of the scenario you've just described?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. No. Okay. The second thing is, I've read this, and I've also read the rather alarmist headlines in the Otago Daily Times in connection with this particular item. But my understanding is, and I've sat around this table for 10 years now, and I've gone through a number of these, is that this isn't too bad in comparison to where we've been in the last 10 years. Things are actually looking up. People have got the message about clean burning and dry wood and stuff like that. So the next time, can I just ask, we get one of these, can we just do a sequence over the last 10 years? So instead of beating ourselves up and areas and sort of suggesting that they are outliers or things like that, can we make a comparison over the last 10 years? This is a question I'm asking, so that we can see if things are getting better, staying the same, or getting worse. Tom.
Yeah, there's similar feedback, Michael, from the last couple of annual reports we've provided on water quality as well. And yeah, we'll look into making sure that these papers start to include information where we can on how this relates to the trends, and put them into a better comparison for the last decade or so. Because you're right, in this situation, the results are actually pretty good when you compare them year on year.
Thank you so much.
In that regard, just before I move to Councillor Malcolm, what comms did we put out about that the ODT picked up?
We put out a media release yesterday that broadly said broadly outlined the results of the paper, and framed them in an appropriate way, not particularly positive, pretty neutral, but certainly not any significant negative messaging. But there's an ODT headline that was kind of as they can be sometimes.
Well, can I just talk to that just very quickly, Madam Chair? That's exactly the point, Tom. The ODT wouldn't have taken that headline and reported that negative if we had to have put out the press release. I didn't want to raise it, but that's the reason I was obliquely saying, listen, a 10-year period would be good so that the people of Otago and those living there can actually reference if it's getting better or worse. And I think that our comms team let us down a bit yesterday, just quietly on this. It might have been our comms team. It might have been the way we framed the information to them. But it would be useful, Richard, if we actually did that comparison so that we don't get the scary headlines that somehow this is a really bad thing when things are getting better.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, probably to Mr. Dyer, further on from Councillor Wilson's question and with our LTP process and it's good to see that you have got increased monitoring stations or whatever going through. Have you actually decided on an optimum level where you're heading to, so we could make a decision either to speed that timing up or leave it as you require?
So at the moment, as funding allows, Sarah and the team are moving around the region, collecting information for areas where it appears there might be an issue, and just getting ourselves to a place where we can answer that question with data. So those temporary trailers are moving around the region, picking up a whole bunch of different sites. The results of that monitoring will inform what a future monitoring network needs to look like, and will also, some of that monitoring network information will need to come from future air plans. There's a relationship there. You know, we install each air sheds. Some of them will need monitoring or not. But all of those things get put in the mix, and will come together as part of that proposal for long-term planning.
So some of that could also show that you no longer need to monitor air zones, so if the improvements have been made as such.
Yep, there's some sites where in the past we have monitored actively and reduced monitoring over time, and that may be the case as we go through that review as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Councillor Robertson.
Will weather conditions be a major factor as well in what results are each season? So that year by year it'd be quite hard to say whether it was better or not, I suppose.
Yeah, that is true. It does vary year by year. That's something that I'll have to think about how to tackle that as we go through the process.
Further questions? Would somebody like to move that we note this report, or in fact move something different?
And Gary would like to second.
Right, moved. Councillor Robertson, seconded Councillor Kelleher. Debate.
Right. Sorry.
Go first.
Sure. Yeah,
Followed
no,
by
just-
councillor Somerville.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to thank the team for the amount of thought that's gone into the work over the last year and obviously many years before that as well, getting to a point where we've got a good range of sites, a number of variables being tested there, and an ability to be able to track trends over time as well now. So that's really helpful. Looking forward to seeing those reports in the future. I understand that last winter was reasonably windy comparative to others. So, yeah, less inversions happening, which was good because we did have less issues, I think. But yeah, just I suppose mindful of interpreting year by year. That's not the purpose of this report. But it is really handy to have it each year, and we have still got some issues there. So, yeah, I think in looking towards the long-term planning, we do need to be thinking not just about the monitoring and setting ourselves up well to understand where we're at. It's also investing in assisting communities to make that change in the most efficient and effective way that we can as well. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, councillor Robertson. Said many of the things I was thinking about saying, but I might say them in a slightly different way. I mean, we do know from recent reports that air quality in many towns has been improving over recent years, and that's good. But this report shows that there are still problems and that bad air quality is making people sick. Over the last year, a number of times we've heard from public health physicians and had a big letter from general practitioners outlining the problems that they see for patients and people living in Otago. It is disappointing to me that this council has not taken further action to improve air quality where we have had opportunities to do so. So I guess I'm looking forward to the next long-term plan and I hope we can get some more effective action put in there. So thank you for this reporting.
Councillor Laws.
I wasn't going to speak until Councillor Somerville spoke.
They're not going to agree for one.
No, we might just have to break the duck today, I'm afraid. The reality is that the inversion layer in central Otago and these many of these airsheds has been with us for ever since human settlement. And I'm still, although Councillor Somerville says it's making people sick, yeah, that's why people are flocking to live there from places that apparently got clean air like Dunedin. The reality is that public health officials always tend to portray the worst case scenarios. I've met so many in my lifetime, particularly sitting on a DHB board, where the zombie apocalypse is just around the corner, and it never seems to arrive. And this is yet another one of those. I have to say the elephant in the room on this one is, and this is why I'm always here, and Councillor Keller, I know you backs me on this one as well, and that is the price of electricity. Can I just say? The price of electricity as a result of, and partly as a result of, the incredible inefficiency and ineffectiveness of the Dunedin City Council and the Alliance Company Aurora is such that people living in central Otago, the Queenstown Lakes area, the Dunstan area, do not have an alternative when it comes to solid fuel burning if they want to stay warm over our frigid winters. And until any air quality addresses that particular issue, then the people of central Otago will continue to want to stay warm rather than to shiver in the cold to meet the environmental wishes and fantasies of those who don't live in the region. Thank you.
Councillor Keller.
Yeah, I think Councillor Somerville has sparked me back into action again. I just got a power notice that I'm going to have some power outages at some stage in the very near future. As the submitter in public forum said today, start of the meeting, that best outcome is everyone's got a heat pump. Well, heat pump's not going to be going for that day while that power is out. I think Central Otago especially, but the key parts of Otago where it is cold, a very practical source of home heating is wood burners. And the other advantage to wood burners is when power is out, you can cook on them. You can sustain life while your
Make
power is
scones, Gary.
Exactly, scones, great on a wood burner. Baked scones, the nicest. But anyway, so going into the future, just as Councillor Laws just said, the ideological thinking around what else could there be, for some very ring-fenced areas, there are choices that can be made by those poor unfortunates who find themselves in a health situation where maybe right in an inversion area is not the best place to live if you have these health issues. And what I'm hopeful for is that all the right information is available to those people when they are choosing to live there. If they're making a choice to come to Central Otago, they can choose somewhere where the inversion is least affected. But for the foreseeable future, for quite a long time, we are going to need home heating with wood.
Further debate? Councillor Robertson, it's your right of reply, is it? But it was your right of reply.
Oh, yeah, I don't. Yeah, thank you.
Right. I will put the motion that we note this report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Last but not least, 10.10.
Hey, 10.10 is the Land and Soil Program update, and it is the lucky last and most exciting report of the day. A really diverse and packed report into soil and land use and how healthy we are. Some really interesting stuff here. So yeah, once again, I want to hand over to Eric. Eric and Mark, I believe, are the authors of this one, but we've got the chance here to hear directly on how we're going in soil monitoring, a whole range of topics there. Over to you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm very pleased to present this paper to you, a annual update to the Land Soil Science Programme. Just me, Mark, my counterpart's not here today. So just a bit of background quickly. This area of science hasn't been a big part of the science programme, but it was restarted in 2021. So in the last few years, we've been putting a lot of work into rebuild and fill lots of the gaps and meet the needs of the organisation and the community in this space. And so this update is including some of the ongoing work that we've been doing and also some new programs that we've built since the last update from last year. So just briefly, these ongoing programs are the Soil Health Monitoring Programme, which is nearing completion, unlike other science programs like air quality and water quality that have been ongoing for many years. This is still relatively in its infancy, so we're still building capacity there. And there's also the alternative winter grazing research project that is mostly Mark's project that he's managing, which is in its second year. And there's the community engagement tools that we've been building through the 3D printing capabilities. Those are the ongoing programs that are in the paper. And then there are some new ones to the council, which are the prioritization tool that we've developed for hill country erosion and the mapping program of septic tanks in the region as well. So that's most of the content of the paper. And I just want to take the opportunity also to thank those who've been involved in putting this work together. the colleagues and collaborators, and also importantly, all the landowners who have been part of the monitoring programs, which requires their consent for us to come onto their land and measure properties that directly link to often to how they manage the land. So it's really important that we have their support, because the soil health monitoring program, for example, wouldn't exist without that relationship. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Robertson, followed by Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Laws.
Just what table? Table 2 on the land use and soil health data. Yeah, I can see the N there, so the sample size. Vegetables is sample size of 1 property, I understand. Just could you please let us know whether you can draw conclusions about the land use types across Otago based on the amount of data that we've got at the moment? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as I've said, it's a growing program. So those aren't the final numbers that we're aiming for. But also, as you might be aware, vegetable growing at a commercial scale is relatively limited in extent in Otago. And so coming back to that relationship and permission from the landowners to directly measure from their property, I've approached as many commercial entities as I'm aware of, and so far only one has been willing to be involved. So potentially that might be all we'll get. But yeah, you're right. One sample size of 1 doesn't tell you much apart from a very limited indication.
You think you've got a big sample size, but enough to be representative in some of the land uses though, like some are quite good numbers.
Yeah. So happy with some, and it's the sample size is a balance between representing that land use in terms of extent regionally and the potential of that land use to have environmental impact. So there's also a limited number of samples that you'd want to have any statistical power in any analyses. So this coming fieldwork season is planned to be the last one of establishing new sites, and that's really all about making sure we have that power and enough samples in those different combinations for future analyses.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Just paragraph 5, I'm interested in the research that we're supporting and understanding what that support is. To the work on investigating alternative farm systems to intensive winter grazing, and what the output is, because it's fine to find different methods, but understanding the economic and the financial costs as well, and it doesn't allude to that. And I'm just checking that we understand the outputs as well as the study part of it.
Yeah, so that's a really important part of supporting adoption of different approaches, and that's something that we've identified as being a key part of that research. And so for this coming winter, the monitoring will also include economic analysis, so a costing of all the management changes to a conventional intensive winter grazing system, and seeing how those costs compare in those alternative systems, because as you say, it's crucial for any adoption. And that was also a big part of having these case study farms. So these 2 farmers who are actively modifying their approaches, is to get that farmer perspective directly on the land. How is it working? Because any adoption is unlikely to be successful coming directly from the council, unfortunately. It will be peer-to-peer. And so that's really the concept behind it.
And how are we supporting it?
Financially, through supporting the ag research work and some staff time and also supporting monitoring and management of the project.
Thank you.
We find this quite a niche role for us to be the link between sort of academic or CRI level research and how that plays out on the ground. So we find that Eric and colleagues do quite a good job of bringing in the ag research type pure research and linking up with industry groups like BFNLAM and others, and farmers who are willing to try something new. So this is sort of the approach in this case here.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
I'm fascinated by clauses 37 to 43 because they're a real issue in Dunstan, as my colleagues will know. And that is septic tanks. In 2015, according to this report, the council identified, our council, that unconsented septic tanks were a risk to groundwater. That's 2015. I don't need to remind you that we're living in 2026. And now you've done some more work on how many there are in terms of consented and unconsented, and the mass majority, as you note in the report, are unconsented. What I'm interested in knowing is what's the risk now? I'm not the risk. What's the practical effects have you found? So in other words, if the risk was identified in 2015, you're still saying there's a risk. You've quantified the number of septic tanks. Is there anything to indicate from research that the ORC has conducted that there is now not an environmental risk, but environmental damage as a consequence of these unconsented septic tanks?
Yep, I'm happy to start answering that question, but I might pass it on to Amir, who is our groundwater scientist who's been involved in this project. But there's a lag effect. I'll start off saying that, and we do monitor groundwater quality, and so with the increased development in those areas that you mentioned, more of these septic tanks being present, the effect of those might not be measured in real time, but I'll pass it on to Amir to go into any detail.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to present as well. Yes, I'm a groundwater scientist at council. I've been helping Mark Crawford with his work, which was done externally. So some of the groundwater monitoring in some areas does, shows impacts of septic tanks, but I mean, this work was more to, I guess, update our understanding of where they are as well. And PHF, who's the modelers, are currently working on loads as well, so to understand the contaminant loads better.
Except, again, I come back to the point. You've known the risk since 2015. Here we are in 2026. Have you identified particular areas where there is actual environmental damage or groundwater damage or contamination from septic tanks anywhere?
No, don't. I mean, there's some areas definitely when there. I guess there's indicators of.
Well, where was that?
For instance, Glenorchy.
Right. So you've tested there, and you can say there is contaminated groundwater as a consequence of septic tanks not being treated properly.
Well, it's not. I mean, we haven't done. I guess you can. Our groundwater monitoring is fairly. We look at what they call like your major constituents. So it'll be parameters like nitrate, ammonia, phosphate, E. coli. I don't think we've done too much. More further detailed investigative work, but
You say you have legal requirements to do with septic tanks, Richard, to do with septic tanks. So if you've got those legal requirements, then I would expect that there's a body of work in which you say, well, we know about the risk. Let's go and just check what the groundwater is in that area and if that risk is actual or imagined.
So just to help out a little bit, we've scaled up our groundwater monitoring quite significantly over the last 5 years. So the team put a lot of effort into putting in additional wells and bits and pieces. Those will continue to give results as we move forward. What Amir was describing before is that most of our so some of our groundwater monitoring has included results so far that show elevated levels of a range of contaminants, some of which are best described by as being caused by, likely being caused by septic tanks in the area around them. As you know, with most of our environmental science work, it's difficult to pinpoint something precisely and be able to say that's exactly what's going on. But at this stage, based on the results, it looks like there are effects from septic tanks in a few places. Glenorchy is a good example of one. But in saying that, it's not just that. It's not to say that there's not sites where high densities of septic tanks may be causing issues where we're not picking that up at the moment. The exercise that the team have been through gives us a good indication of where those sites might be and where we may need to consider further environmental monitoring work to be able to determine if those effects are occurring.
Yeah, I guess the question the reason I've asked the question obviously is we've done the work now, you've assessed the risk, you've known this for a long time, we've now quantified how many of those there are. Now, obviously the next thing, and I would have expected to be done with all due respect from the last 11 years, is okay, now you know the risk, is there actually something happening that we need to take action on? And at the moment you're saying, well, we've got more work to do down that area, is that right?
That's the best summary for it.
Yeah,
But also I would point out, because it has been raised, and it's obviously going back to 2015, there was a substantial piece of work done as part of the land and water plan looking at how we control or mitigate the risk of septic tanks, including proper reporting, proper monitoring, permitted requirements to have them certified that they're operating properly, things that we would expect in a modern plan. And obviously that never eventuated. So there were steps being taken through your question around what are we doing about it. That work was done, and it was brought through workshops. I remember the discussions because Kate raised septic tanks on a reasonably regular basis. So we brought that through as part of the land and water plan process because it was a known issue going back to 2015. We didn't get the chance to implement that and bring in what would be considered a modern regulatory framework for septic tanks.
That's not quite what I'm asking. You're trying to deal with risk in the land and water plan. I understand that. What I'm asking is, can we prove there's a problem? That's the reason. I mean, if the risk is such, that's fine. You've identified the risk. You would have expected over the 11 years that the IRC would have said, right, bang, off we go. Let's go and test the groundwater in these particular areas. In my neck of the woods, for example, septic tanks are right like topsy, growing all the time, particularly in lifestyle areas. Clyde in that area is huge in terms of septic tanks. But what I want to know is there any actual damage? A risk is fine, but is that practical reality? Is there a risk to the groundwater, to the environment in that area as a consequence? Can we quantify it?
And I think that's fair. That goes back to Tom's response around increasing the groundwater science program to improve our understanding and try and pinpoint where that's occurring.
And I think just to reframe that a touch, in some areas, yes, we can. We have a link between some monitored results and what we believe is the cause, being septic tanks. This particular piece of work gets us closer to being able to consider that at a regional scale, because that monitoring at the moment, you know, you've got to have a bore that's being monitored for the right chemical parameters within proximity of a septic tank. That's not always the case in terms of our monitoring network.
So even if we consented, we wouldn't know. Is that right? So even if we consented and said, you've got to have a consent, we still wouldn't know if the damage was occurring or not under the current science.
Not necessarily. this piece of work gets us much closer to that as a building block for being able to consider that at a regional scale.
Right, thank you.
I do observe, I'll move on shortly to councillor Kelleher, then councillor Robertson, but I do observe that the point of us having papers out 10 days in advance and things is that there are some questions that people have that could have been asked once the papers were out, so as it would have simplified this process round the table. Round the table, of course, we have over 20 people sitting at however much we all cost sitting here listening. If there's any chance of you asking questions beforehand, having read your papers, I urge you to do so. Councillor Kelleher.
Yeah, although I think on that wise advice from the esteemed chair, it's taken the sitting around the table and the asking of the questions to actually flesh out where we sit with septic tanks. So, because would it be fair to say that there's a real risk here around when we talk about septic tanks, we are potentially talking about a very tightly ring-fenced certain set of areas that could be an issue, and across the rest of Otago, the very broadly spread septic tanks are most likely functioning very well and meeting the engineering purpose, the service they provide. And of course, the risk then is that the deeper we get into a potential trying to solve it for some very tight areas, could we then end up blanketly drawing in all the rest and having an imposition that is unnecessary? Would that be a fair question?
I can speak to that initially. I think you're right. There are certain areas, and it's the density of these septic tanks in particular that we're interested in from a risk to groundwater. But I think there's still real value in us understanding the distribution of them more broadly, because we assess contaminant loading to groundwater and surface water across a range of activities, and understand what the real challenges or potential for affecting those water sources is through the compounding effect of different activities co-located in in combination with different environmental conditions. And so even if it's in an area where you might have 1 in 10 or 100 hectares, which doesn't seem to be that important or that high risk from a septic tank perspective, it's still of great value. In terms of, I'm guessing the question is also regarding blanket regulation that would be targeting those high dense areas but having effect on others. I'm not too sure on that side, but I know there was a lot of work put in for the plan where there was still a permitted activity pathway for septic tanks. There were just some more requirements around design, and we would need to be provided the location information, something that we've had to get through this avenue. So yeah, I'll stop talking because I don't know anymore.
Councillor Robertson.
Sorry, I hope that this is a helpful question. Just on the soil health, basically what we've got there is many of our land uses are not in the optimal, well, the green band anyway, I suppose. We've got about half that are showing problems, I suppose, in terms of either being review or revise. Is that something to worry about, or is that sort of normal across the country? Do we know that, I know it's early days for the program, but it seems like something that's really pretty important for our region and really valuable data. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so as you say, it's relatively early, and I think what will be really valuable to understand is how they track over time. So these are all single visits to each of these sites. So from 2027 onwards, we'll be revisiting the same sites in a staged fashion, and that will give us a 5-year span of time. A lot can change, and there are other limitations, but it will allow us to understand whether they're in a sort of stable position, or if further degradation or improvement, in fact, is happening. And so that will be a key point to assess. But from that national side question, this is pretty common nationally. And yeah, there's lots I could say on that, but yeah, but these land uses do have impact on soil health, but of course they're not remaining in that state. You know, management practices and change through a year. You know, every year or rotational cycles, they do change those values. So to some extent, so that one snapshot is, as it says in the word, it's a snapshot, and so there's only so much you can really draw from that, because this is only the 4th year, so it will really take a bit more time to have a better understanding of direction.
Councillor Hollier.
I wasn't able to prepare this question earlier because all the pennies have only just dropped while I've been listening to the learned people around this table. Sorry, Hilary. Just pick up on Michael's comment about how would you know if there's a problem? It's kind of where you're going. I happen to have a septic tank in Glenorchy, so I'm really interested in what's going on in here. I think everything's in working order, but the reticulated water that is provided to the township in Glenorchy, I'm pretty sure the source is not underneath my own septic tank, for example. But the testing data from their water stuff, is that shared with you guys? Are you aware of what's going on in the quality of the water that is provided through reticulation and noticing any early signals or signs that there could be an impact? I'm just trying to think of whether there's new science or there's existing stuff, so people are swapping notes. Is that a program that you guys have? And
I can probably
early indicator stuff.
So we'll have a paper coming in the next meeting or two. The Drinking Water Services Act that came in a few years ago really sort of directs the water providers and regional councils to work a lot more closely on the source water health. So that will certainly encourage that greater sharing of results between the QLDC water people and us. So.
Matt, your water doesn't come from anywhere that's affected by septic tanks.
Councillor Wilson.
Some easy questions, I think. When it comes to soil type and discharges from septic tanks, there is a correlation with the suitability of the soil to that. And while you talk about groundwater health, where these may be seepage into groundwater, which is poor supplies, that has caused in parts of Otago problems in the past, I believe, like Ellington. Are you aware of those as examples where the soil is such that it couldn't take? Do you know those examples?
Not specifically those locations. This is a bit peripheral to exactly what I do, but definitely aware of the suitability of soil types for attenuating contaminants in from the disposal fields that's associated with a septic tank. And I guess the permitted activity pathway that exists currently means we have no control over where they are situated. And so that's something that the proposed plan was looking to address.
And just further to that, so there's a process, I forget the technical name for it, that our TAs undertake regularly. It's a water and sanitary services survey, something like that. I've been responsible for one in the past. So that's the process. We look at the services that are provided to a community for which you're responsible for. You work out whether or not those services, if they're septic tanks, whether or not that's an appropriate method for undertaking that activity. And Ellington, that survey was conducted. It was done with support from OSC staff at the time, many years ago now. That resulted in the eventual installation of a wastewater collection system discharging to a centralised treatment plant, thereby decommissioning all of the septic tanks in that place. So if one of those were to arise again, one, this work would help to inform it, and two, we would engage heavily with ETAs on undertaking that.
Thank you. There's a question asked, and to ensure that sometimes we focus on the groundwater health, which is absolutely true and necessary, but actually the cost of infrastructure being sunk unnecessarily, literally into the ground, when a alternative solution may save infrastructure, especially with rapid growth areas, is a different, but another reason why you might look at it.
A couple of disparate sort of questions, really. I think right back at the beginning of this discussion, you said something about you were looking for commercial people to engage with something and you found one of them. Is that what you said?
That was vegetable growers, commercial vegetable growers.
Right.
In particular.
Is that what this report says, or?
It was in response to a question about just there being one.
I'm asking whether I just missed it or whether it was in this report.
It's in table 2. It just shows that there's one under N, which is the sample size. So there's just one vegetable growing location.
So why do you think that other people don't want to partake in helping you with it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I can only speculate. But I suppose with us being the regulator, we're not always that popular. And I suppose I have to ensure the people running these operations that this won't come back to bite them. But at the end of the day, it's their choice, and some, I guess, are worried that this could, if they were to score badly, for example, that it would have ramifications for them in the future, and they don't want to take that risk as much.
Are they right?
No.
Can I just help out with this one? So Eric goes through a lot of work to try and establish relationships with site owners. Goes through a lot of efforts to anonymise the site. So you'll notice in the maps, the results, you'll see a kind of broad square as to where the site was located, but you couldn't tell which farm it was from, or even which hill in a lot of cases. So that's one step that we undertake. The idea is to make opting in to having your site monitored as easy as possible for people. In some cases, because of our reputation or because of a range of different things, it's just hard to get people across the line with this type of thing. And saying that, if anyone around the table knows any vegetable growers, I think they might be keen to offer up a site. We're absolutely interested in establishing more. But at this stage, Eric's exhausted himself in doing that. We'd be open to any other opportunities that arise. But there's a range of people choose to open their gate or not. There's a range of reasons.
Well, that's why I thought that possibly some of us could help, except that if there is a downside, then we're not going to try and talk them into something that we then have some information about their land that would make us do a bad thing with it from their point of view.
My advice would be that there is no material downside to this. That would all be deceived.
Thank you. Sorry, do you want to add to that?
Final word. And yeah, just to build on what Tom was saying, because this relationship is so important, especially in that repeat visit, it's completely in our interest to ensure that the landowners are happy in this arrangement so that we can return, because that's whether, we make an investment in a location, we want to return to be able to get that really valuable long-term data. And so I try my best to make that as beneficial for them as possible. And these tests do cost money, and we provide tests that aren't commercially available either. And so that's the value that we're returning to those people. And I produce individual soil health reports for each landowner, and I'm open for any discussion. So it's really sort of cultivating that relationship to ensure sort of the long-term viability of those locations.
Thank you. And just one last question. As you can see from questions about septic tanks and things, it might have been helpful for councillors to see some information about what we know about the septic tanks and are they causing a mischief and all those things. Is that something that your report, next time we see one or in general, would appropriately expand on, or is it another report at some point that we should get?
We always try and learn from these discussions, so we'll figure that out and hopefully inform the table as in the most appropriate way going forward.
Thank you. No further questions. Have we got?
Happy to move. Oh, that's
No,
something.
you go.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go.
Happy to move.
Moved councillor Malcolm.
Yep. Happy to see.
Seconded councillor Robertson. All those in favour?
Will I just talk to that first, since it is.
Sorry,
something
beg your
I'm trying to get
pardon.
away, but I'd really like to.
Debate, councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you. Just soil health is an absolute mystery in many places, and the greater understanding the users of that soil and the regulatory authorities and the people around it can have, the better. So I think we need to continue to strive to work with our land users to ensure that they are not threatened by these types of processes, that at the end of the day, as an organisation, we are trying to ensure the sustainable use of our resources, and by doing this we get a greater understanding of what our soil is and how we can use it better. So I think it actually is a heck of a lot of upside for the whole productivity of the province. So at the end of the day, we should be working to ensure we're getting that message across and continuing understanding of the soil. Thank you.
Further debate.
I just all agreed with me. So happy for you to put the motion.
I want to write a reply then, councillor Malcolm, to the previous speaker.
No, I'm happy.
I'll put the motion in. All those in favour?
Aye.
On the contrary, carried. And that is the end of our meeting today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
That's good. Including